Alright, let me preface this by saying I have 3 tattoos, they're all sacred geometry. Look, I even have a Lumerian star seed crystal. But we need to think bigger, and we need to be real. Today, we're delving into the growing wave of new spirituality movements and how they often mirror traditional religious rhetoric, especially when it comes to anti-technology stances and the concept of ascension as a means of salvation. New spirituality movements have garnered a massive following, especially among those disenchanted with traditional religious institutions. They promise a form of spirituality that is more personalized, liberated, and in tune with modern sensibilities. It's important to scrutinize these claims and philosophies that underpin these movements. With deeper analysis, one finds that many of these New Age spiritualities repurpose older religious ideas. For instance, the anti-technology sentiment is found in some religious doctrines, often resurfaces in these movements. This bears the question, are we genuinely transcending the limitation of traditional religious thought, or simply rebranding them? Anti-technology sentiments. Technology, often seen as a hallmark of human progress, is frequently criticized within these spiritual circles. Claims range from the technology being a distraction from our true selves to being a direct path to societal downfall. These views echo religious criticisms of technology as playing God or leading humanity away from spiritual purity. Ironically, many of these movements rely on technology for dissemination. The anti-technology stance ignores the ways tech can facilitate community, activism, and access of knowledge. This selective borrowing from religious skepticism of technology raises red flags about the intellectual consistency of these movements. The term ascension is often used as a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment or awakening. Just like the religious ideas of salvation or nirvana, ascension implies a final, ultimate state of being. This notion perpetuates a dualistic view. Ascended versus non-ascended can foster exclusion and judgment. It also places undue pressure on individuals to achieve the elevated state, echoing a religious quest for salvation or enlightenment. The pursuit of ascension can be overshadowed by the importance of community, social justice, and collective well-being. As a result, the focus remains on individual spiritual journeys, neglecting broader societal issues that need addressing. The trap of spiritual elitism. Concepts discussed within these movements can easily lead to a form of spiritual elitism. Those who consider themselves ascended or awakened may look down upon others who haven't reached this state. This mirrors religious exclusivity, where only a select few are chosen or saved. Such elitism distracts from the interconnectedness and shared humanity that many of these movements claim to promote. It reinforces a hierarchical structure that these New Age spiritualities supposedly aim to dismantle. Ultimately, it serves as a tool of control, not unlike the religious doctrines from which they draw inspiration. The acceptance of mortality. A surprising aspect of some of these new spiritual movements in their acceptance or even romanticizing mortality. The concept of the natural life cycle is invoked to make peace with the realities of aging and death. This stance often overlooks the unequal distribution of suffering and the different challenges people face due to health, socioeconomic conditions, and other factors. Accepting mortality as a natural aspect of human life downplays the imperative to address these disparities. It creates an ethical dilemma. Is it spiritually enlightened to accept suffering and death when potentially preventable? In essence, this perspective allows adherents to avoid grappling with the complex ethical landscapes of modern life. Don't take the life extension technology, don't get help, don't get your diseases cured. No. And it's funny because a lot of these spiritual movements, divine and celestial embodiment, all that BS, they give you a lot of decent stuff, but then they have the same position on technology and life extension as the Vatican. No, you can go ahead and die, you should die. No. The life extension technology is only for the rich. No, you should die and get heaven that you can only get by having this little starseed crystal here. This stance effectively mirrors religious apocalyptic narratives, portraying technology as a harbinger of end times. Ironically, these movements rely on technology for dissemination. The trend of putting spirituality behind paywalls limits access to wisdom, making it an elite commodity. Workshops, courses, and exclusive content are often exorbitantly priced. 3333, the special number, buy it right now. With all these fancy little drawings of the torus field and magnetosphere. Some even sell abundance courses that claim to unlock financial prosperity through spiritual means, paradoxically reinforcing the system they critique. This lack of tangible solutions renders their critique superficial, offering no path for meaningful societal transformation. Alignments with World Economic Forum narratives. Some spiritual movements surprisingly echo sentiments put forth by organizations like the World Economic Forum, especially concerning global unity and interconnectedness. While this could be seen as a positive overlap, it often lacks critical engagement with the complexities of economic and societal issues. Like the WEF, these spiritual movements advocate for a great reset or transformation, but the details are often sketchy. Means to achieve such goals are not laid out. Transcendence instead of transhumanism, that kind of thing. The absence of concrete action plans make it easy for these ideas to be co-opted by larger institutions that may not have individual or communal well-being as a priority. Earlier, all these movements, spiritual movements, they are lining up with the same views as a patriarchal religion. Just as the WEF provides high-level talks without diving into grassroots issues, spiritual movements offer lofty ideals without tangible solutions. Phrases like raising global consciousness sound appealing but lack actionable steps to address the socio-economic crisis at hand. Both entities offer visions of a better world but rarely support the tools necessary to construct that world. This lack of concrete action can serve to placate the masses while leaving existing power structures intact. The WEF's annual meetings and spiritual retreats share a lack of transparency and accountability to the public. Attendees often comprise a select group of people who can afford the high costs of participation. The ultimate irony is when a movement is started with the promise of individual empowerment becomes a tool for collective subjugation. When criticizing institutions like the World Economic Forum for their materialistic focus, the criticism paradoxically reflects a detachment from worldly affairs, while also expressing concern for the system the World Economic Forum represents. It creates a duality where the movements both reject and engage with worldly matters without offering practical solutions. Often, these ascension-focused movements appear more interested in individual spiritual elevation than the systemic change, rendering their criticisms of the World Economic Forum largely ineffectual. A subset of spiritual movements advocate lifestyle changes such as veganism, but exhibit inconsistencies like the use of honey, revealing a speciesist bias. Such contradictions highlight the gap between the ethical standards they profess and the practical choices they make. A form of lifestylism focuses on individual choices rather than systemic issues, limiting its potential for broader societal impact. The selective adherence to ethical principles undermines their critique of broader systems, such as the WEF, and questions their credibility. Spiritual movements that criticize the WEF often lack a complete ethical framework, leading to inconsistencies in their principles and practices. For example, they might talk about equality and justice, but ignore or justify speciesism in their lifestyle choices. Contradictions undermine the movement's claim to moral superiority over systems and institutions they criticize. Their incomplete ethical frameworks make it difficult for these movements to present themselves as credible alternatives to existing structures. Spiritual movements often dismiss 15-minute cities as capitalist schemes. The critique lacks nuance, labeling these initiatives as purely market-driven. This dismissive stance hinders constructive dialogue on urban sustainability. The criticisms may deter public support for potentially beneficial urban reforms. Overall, these movements critique without offering alternative solutions, polarizing the issue. So the summary, the contradictions of modern spirituality movements. Many modern spirituality movements criticize societal structures while paradoxically benefiting from them. They often dismiss science and technology as paths to human growth, advocating for ascension but offer no concrete steps. While criticizing capitalist narratives, they themselves monetize spirituality, locking key information behind paywalls. They champion alternative lifestyles but fail to address overarching issues like speciesism or provide any viable solutions. These movements have a complicated relationship with organizations like the World Economic Forum, both rejecting and mirroring their objectives. In essence, the spiritual movements present a bundle of contradictions, advocating for change while perpetuating the very system they critique. Until someone actually uses their spiritual powers for levitating or something, growing food, let's focus on real-world solutions.